The United States military is currently executing a punishing air campaign over Iran. American and Israeli forces enjoy complete aerial supremacy, methodically dismantling radar sites, surface fleets, and missile launch capabilities across the country. Yet, despite obliterating the majority of the Islamic Republic's conventional forces, the Americans are struggling to secure a definitive victory. The Iranian regime knew they couldn't defeat advanced Western fighter jets in a traditional battle, so they relied on swarms of cheap, expendable drones to target a different objective entirely. Iran's most effective weapon isn't in the sky, it's a feature of the map. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow, 54-kilometer stretch of water, flanked by rugged, mountainous terrain. Controlling this tiny geographic bottleneck provides leverage over the global economy. The administration launched this war expecting a rapid collapse of the Iranian government within days. By misjudging the leverage provided by this single waterway, the conflict has devolved from a predicted 3-day victory into a strategic trap with parallels to the 2003 invasion of Iraq. To understand the leverage Iran holds, look at this map of global energy distribution. The Strait of Hormuz is the primary artery for the planet's fuel. 1/5 of the entire global supply of oil and liquefied natural gas must travel through this specific channel to reach the rest of the world. Shutting down that artery triggers immediate panic. Countries like Iraq, Kuwait, and Qatar have their exports locked in the Persian Gulf. The International Energy Agency has already recorded this disruption as the largest oil supply shock in history, leaving European and Asian markets starved of critical resources. This chart tracks the direct consequence of that blocked supply. As millions of barrels of oil are removed from the market, global fuel prices spike. Economists observe a consistent relationship. Every $10 increase in a barrel of oil raises base costs for businesses, driving domestic inflation rates back up toward 5 or 6%. The economic pressure generated at the strait extends far beyond the Middle East. When Hormuz closes, the resulting price surges impact global consumer costs, creating a set of conditions that can tip the entire world into a recession. So, how does a military with practically no surface fleet manage to block the United States Navy? They don't try to fight ship to ship. Instead, Iran operates a ghost blockade. By hiding cheap drones and sea mines inside thousands of rugged coastal caves, they only need to attack a merchant vessel occasionally. That creates enough risk and fear that insurance companies refuse to cover supertankers navigating the strait, freezing trade completely. The American military response to this tactic is financially exhausting. U.S. forces are firing multi-million-dollar Tomahawk cruise missiles and advanced interceptors to shoot down Iranian drones that cost roughly $20,000 to build. In a matter of weeks, the U.S. burned through a quarter of its entire pre-war Tomahawk stockpile. The hardware is running low, and the personnel are exhausted. Multi-billion-dollar assets like the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier are breaking historical deployment records, staying continuously at sea for nearly 300 days just to maintain a holding pattern over the Gulf. You cannot bomb geography. Complete aerial supremacy means very little when the enemy uses the natural terrain to hide their weapons and dictate the pace of the conflict. Because of this geographic advantage, the Islamic Republic's win condition is simple. They do not have to defeat the Americans in combat. They just have to survive the airstrikes long enough for the economic pain of the Hormuz blockade to break Western political resolve, and any hope for a negotiated settlement evaporated in the opening days of the campaign. American airstrikes killed the nation's supreme leader, forcing a rapid transition of power to his son, Mojtaba Khamenei. This installed a regime with deep ties to the military wing that is entirely unwilling to negotiate. With diplomacy off the table, the United States is now locked in a war of economic attrition against an entrenched enemy. And in this specific scenario, the clock favors the defender. The administration is now boxed into a corner with terrible options. They can try to negotiate from a position of weakness, effectively conceding to Iran's demands. Or they can do nothing, absorb the political damage, and watch as rising oil prices suffocate the global economy. That leaves a third, highly escalatory option: putting boots on the ground. The U.S. could attempt an amphibious assault to physically capture the islands within the Strait of Hormuz and force the sea lanes open. They could also target offshore economic assets, like Karg Island, which handles over 90% of Iran's crude oil exports. But look at the density of this infrastructure. A major military operation here would almost certainly damage the oil terminals and the docked tankers. Destroying Karg Island would remove even more oil from the global market, worsening the exact inflation crisis the U.S. is trying to solve. To go all the way and topple the regime would require a force of unprecedented size. During the 2003 invasion of neighboring Iraq, the U.S. required roughly 300,000 troops. Iran is nearly 4 times the size of Iraq, covered in towering mountain ranges, and has 3 times the population. Adjusting these numbers proportionally suggests that pacifying Iran would demand a ground force of over 1 million soldiers. Sustaining an occupation of that magnitude would require troop levels surpassing the absolute peak of American forces deployed during the Vietnam War, making it impossible to achieve without reinstating a military draft. By expecting air superiority to ensure a swift victory, the administration repeated a classic error. This conflict echoes Russia's miscalculation in Ukraine, demonstrating that even with vast military funding and technological supremacy, physical geography remains a permanent constraint that cannot be bypassed.